Hello.
Yay, we started.
Wow. This has been pretty intense getting this started.
Yeah.
uh,
It's okay. We're here now.
how are you doing, man?
I'm okay. Yeah,
Cool,
I'm great
cool.
actually, considering like my back has been,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
I
know,
know.
broken for the past 3 weeks. How about you?
Yeah,
How's it going?
nothing with the Broken Bone Brothers, remember?
Yeah,
My-
I know, right?
it's I've started rehab now, and so it does seem to be like my knee gets like tired just pressing towels now apparently, which is how you begin rehab and stuff. But it's on the road to recovery, so I think that's good. you know
Good.
it's the best that we can hope for, I guess.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Is Jay? I thought Jay was going to be part of this conversation. Is he not on?
Yeah. No, it seems he
Oh,
just wants to do this part. Yeah.
got it. Okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Jay's in the studio.
Yeah, he's
Jay's in the
like he's
studio.
like
It's a
the
studio man.
godfather. He has the strings, he holds the strings. See.
Okay. It's
But
just you and me. All right.
yeah, we're
Cool.
just gonna shoot the shit for some time. We don't do
So,
enough of that, so now we've had to create a property to do it. You see what it is?
well, we may as well like get some entertainment value out of
Right.
all of
For
our,
other people.
well,
Yeah.
because we're always musing about what as broader uh, dynamics
Then the
in
project.
the
Right.
market and in crypto, and but also like sociologically, I guess, too,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
geopolitically, we're always talking about these issues
Yeah. Let's do one
every
thing.
every
Let me
week,
let
right?
me
Yeah.
yeah, let me do a little intro to this thing so that then we can go back to this topic because it's interesting, I think.
Yeah.
So like this part will just cut out or whatever, and I'll just give it like a 10-second intro or whatever, right?
I think we should keep it in. It's super authentic, like keep it,
All
keep all the
right.
warts and all the pimples, like keep it
Wow.
all in.
Sure.
Yeah,
All
super,
right.
super
Let me at least give this a attempt at some kind of professionalism. So let me just say, hi everybody. Clearly, we've already started the first episode of the Most Important Thing podcast. This is basically Dylan's brainchild because, like he was saying earlier, we muse a lot in general on a philosophical level about where the space is headed, and things beyond that are headed, really where society is headed, right? And I think so. I just got done doing that cohort based course, right, in India for the Web3 education thing. It was 3 weeks.
right. Yeah.
And one of the things, even in that, one of the things I found very interesting was because I was speaking to an audience that was not Web3 native. So I was being very careful about speaking in a way that they could hear me, right?
Mm.
And I think that's a good point to start here, is that while I was presenting, I eventually realized 3 weeks in that what I had been asking them to see was that technology changes business models. And that's all. It's just the internet changed the way business was done. And now, if the internet changes fundamentally again, then business will change again. And that's really what we're talking about. So again, and it
Hmm.
obviously had these like philosophical layers and sociological layers, like you said. So I think that's a good point to start. I think this is the kind of stuff that we're going to cover in this podcast. I don't think it's going to be very formal, right? It's more
No, not
like
at all. Very
musings on
informal.
Web3. Yeah, more like Web3 musings or something.
Yeah, and like anybody who's listening in or watching, give us. It is very informal. It's casual, but give us a little leeway as it's our inaugural
Right.
podcast. Despite the like hyperbolic title of the podcast, the most important thing. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I think
That's a
you
target.
titled. I think you titled it, right, and I think that you
Ah,
came up with that title, if I recall. I'm
great.
pretty
I'll
sure
take
you
it.
did.
I'll
Yeah,
take
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I don't
I,
know.
I think you,
I
I think you
honestly
did.
don't remember.
I think you did.
Yeah. Cool.
But like the no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that basically when we had been brainstorming about, okay, let's do a podcast and we can, what can we bring to the space, right? Um, I had find I had found it interesting that we can give a builder's perspective, but also in a way that tells people why they should listen, like not
Hmm.
other builders, right? Like not everybody's a dev, not everybody cares, so to speak, right? And so this word, what's important, kept coming up. And I feel like that's how we kind of stumbled upon this idea that, hey, let's just take out all the other noise and say, what's the most important thing? Like, for example, it's not, I don't want to dive into identity right away, but it's not really identity. It's not, is DIDs better, is VCs better, is SBTs better, It's the personal sovereignty of a human on the net. That's what's so like we take away all the other noisy pieces, not really talk about them in this sort of like ambit or at this spot, right? So I thought it was a good title. And then yes, like you said, it's also a little ambitious, like, hey, can we become the most important podcast that's being made about Web3? Let's see. I mean, it's a long journey to take though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I felt like it was a really good title for the podcast because we're typically searching for what we think is the most important thing as, like people who are getting into podcasts, and especially if they're ones that are sort of blockchain oriented or crypto oriented, they're sort of searching for what they think is sort of some of the more fundamental things to know. I guess this is sitting above and beyond the speculative type of podcasts and pump signals and all that stuff. But and obviously I totally agree with the idea that at its base, this sense of personal sovereignty of the individual in the milieu of being in this sort of like matured Web 2 context where we've sort of built out all these really great, I think we can argue, it's arguable these platforms that exist now are pretty great. Like the UI and the UX, it's like fun, it works. Like TikTok is awesome. Instagram kind of awesome. I mean, like a lot of like, okay, so I know you're incredulous hearing that from me because I'm usually arguing the exact opposite. But I mean, in terms of the experience, right? It's great. Like people get a lot of value out of this. And I think that like coming back to your point about really it's kind of like personal sovereignty being at the heart of this is that's indeed what's sort of like missing in that Web 2 context, because it's sort of like it's like personal creativity masquerading as personal sovereignty, right? So this idea that you can content create, have a lot of influence, and then but you actually don't really have true sovereignty or control over
because you don't have ownership
that content at the end of the day, right? Because of technical issues that we have, right? And so man, I think I think a lot of these things will get solved as time goes on.
I get what you mean too. I get what you mean by there's a funny story from quite a few years ago, actually. Just after I had put my book out, right, I was trying to market myself on a $0 marketing budget, trying to just growth hack basically, right? So I kept making like YouTube videos or little like articles on Medium, long articles, right, about the internet and what it was doing to us and so on and so forth. And so I was already kind of critiquing, say, Facebook and all of these little things that we kept finding. Now obviously this is matured into this whole movement called Web3 or whatever, right? But the idea that, hey, the ownership is missing, or there's censorship, or there are like these pieces that we disagree with, and we hyper fixate on those, right? But I get what you mean is that, well, that platform didn't exist first. So it's like, well, at least you get to create whatever you want now, right? For example, if we take the historical context of like, you couldn't even buy a book. There was a time, not a long time ago, when if you weren't very, very wealthy, just information was scarce, right? And then forget creation. So like in creations now come in. So while it makes sense for us to go, hey, here's the pieces that are missing now, and let's solve them, we should, I think you're right, have like more of a appreciative sort of approach to, like where the situation is right now is still pretty great. We do at least have a possible place for all the minds on earth to meet, on this thing called the internet. And then that didn't exist before at all. So I like that. It's actually one of the things that I appreciate about some builders in the space is that they're not just blatant critics, and you definitely fall in that category as well. It's like you understand that there is a lot of positivity to Web 2. It's not like it's all, oh God, this, So
well,
I like that.
I think a lot of people forget that, 15 years ago, or I guess maybe a little longer, I mean, we didn't really have access to certainly young people, not only they don't even forget, they just never lived it. So it's like, but you know, people of my age or older understand that, you know, there were really only a few, like two, maybe three ways to access, you know, information. One was like your network, right? So you'd have to literally ask people, take notes, like go to the library, right? And am I missing one? I feel like I had three, but I don't know. I'm
Just the
forgetting the two.
newspaper, radio, you know, that
Yeah,
basically, like you
yeah,
said, you
right.
know, it's like centralized spots of information transfer. And like I said, so it's like, so this is something I covered in the course as well, right? It's that initially it was only consumption, and even that was so limited, like you couldn't even find data to consume to begin with, right? And then creation's a whole different thing. Like if you have something to say in the world, you got to find a publisher, write a whole book, there's a bunch of rules and all of those things, right? So it's like from that to here is quite a lot of progress, actually. You know,
I can't remember how old you are, but I think you're like, what, 10 years younger than me or something?
wow,
I mean,
why
you don't
would
have
you
to
put
say it
me
on
on
the
the spot?
podcast, but okay, whatever. I'm going to be 42
Nah,
in a few days. Whatever.
wow, dude, you're old.
I'll put that.
That's a
I'm old.
lot.
I know.
Yeah,
But
no, I'm 29. I'm 29.
okay. So yeah, like, I don't know, like, did you experience like, okay, so you're 29. So I guess like when you were a teenager, did you
Mhm,
feel, and I guess I would have been in my 20s, I do
mhm.
remember kind
Like
of
I am
like,
now.
yeah, like you are now.
This
I
is
do
great.
I do
Hmm.
remember like this feeling of like, wow, like everything's at my fingertips. Like, did you, and it wasn't sort of before, like, did you have, I don't know,
Mm.
like, did you have any experience like evolving just, or not, like, did you have any,
Mm.
like, looking
I
back,
get what you mean.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, did you feel like
yeah.
things were changing? And do you feel like, I mean, I can
I,
tell you some of my viewpoints on this, but like, do you feel like
yeah, do that.
any similar
I'll tell you.
feelings now? Like,
Yeah, do that. I'll tell you where it hit me, and like I think my generation was, I remember the first time you had high five come up, and then so Yahoo
yeah,
Messenger,
I
right, and then
remember
the
high five. Yeah.
chatting thing. So basically, social behavior moving online was the thing for my
Yeah.
generation,
Yeah.
where we were
Yeah.
like, hey, this is fucking different, right? This is a
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
new thing. And then Orkut came in, and that blew the brains of everybody out. It was like, wow, this is amazing, you know, because that was the first most popular sort of like, there's a public profile, people are writing stuff. I remember there's like a scrapbook or something like that, right? So I think to us, having information was kind of a given, but
Hmm.
social interaction moving online, that was really, I remember
Yeah.
properly experiencing, like you said, you know, like feeling like, hey, this is different, and then and it's great. We loved it too, you know. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that happened like later on, I mean, people, it's the same even with the Facebook story, right? People forget that for like, say, the first 5, 6, 10 years, everybody loved Facebook.
Well,
That's how they
before
got where
Facebook,
they got, right?
there was MySpace, and
Yeah.
I loved MySpace, and I remember in the initial days of MySpace was super popular. I don't know, it was like
Right.
2 or 3 years before Facebook, and then it sort of like all went over to Facebook. MySpace was really
Yeah.
interesting, opposed to Facebook, because you could customize your. It was like
Yeah.
you
I
got your
remember
own
you
sort
could
of
put your
web page.
music, you know, that
Yeah,
was
you
the
could put
thing
your
that used to
music.
kill me about my, yeah, that was
And
great. Yeah.
if you were really sophisticated, well, relatively sophisticated, you could search for like the code that you could insert
Mhm.
into, like, you would insert like actual
Yeah.
like code, and then you could customize your page based on code
How
insertions.
it would look. Yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah,
right. I
and
remember all that. Yeah.
and so like, just to your point about, so like sort of taking, because I like this and I want to like kind of expand on it, kind of taking
Mhm.
the social, like how socializing on the internet became this impetus, or this like trigger for people really like spending time and wanting to build, like,
Right.
you know, a MySpace
Right.
profile or start a Facebook thing, was because they wanted to connect to other people, right?
Right.
um and so like I think there's a similar sort of impulse in
Mhm.
the rise over the past, you know, 10 years of crypto, in a way, because
Right.
There's
Because
like sort of
money
this
came
human.
online for the first time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Is because
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
new.
and so you
Right.
had like sociality, I guess, if you want to call it that, or sociability, like the ability to socialize on the internet, and now you have the
Hmm.
ability to transmit essentially monetary value, financial value on the internet, right? So I
Right.
can send you Bitcoin, you can send me it back, and it's not like
Please do.
that didn't
No, no. Why would I?
it's not like it didn't exist, because there
Right.
were good
Yeah.
ways to, there were already ways to, I think in 2015, 2016 by then, to do e-transfers and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
but there was I don't know what point I'm trying to get to, but I guess,
I'll add to this. You know what I
yeah,
think? Because I
maybe,
think that you're missing one piece. It's not just monetary value. There's
mm,
also, you know, how people become insane football team fans, like
yeah,
Arsenal and Man U fans will just like damn near kill each other, right?
yeah,
There's an element of that. So it's not monetary value, it's tokens. And so when it's tokens, what happens is you and I, when we're supporting the same token, it's a little bit of that has a social angle to it. So that it is
yeah,
monetary value underlying it, but there's
yeah,
also this making of a new unit that I feel very comfortable trading back and forth sovereign in a sovereign fashion, because nobody's like looking over my shoulder and so on and so forth. But it also allows these little communities to form where they're all sort of supporting the same thing. And I think that is like, it's some of that social element into money, and then you put that on the net, so it's global all of a sudden. And that's what we're looking at, and I think
do you
people
think,
keep saying it's
no, go ahead, finish, sorry.
I was saying people keep saying it's speculative, right? And I mean, it is, sure, but I think if you sort of distilled all of that mist a little bit, one piece you would find is that people are right now in a very fragmented world where they're actually looking for any and every kind of community, you know.
Mm,
Harkening back to those earlier days, right? One of the things I have still missed the most about that initial phase of Web 2, or whatever we want to call it, is on Yahoo Messenger, you could actually join communities based on interest, and you could
I
actually
remember
meet
that.
new people and chat with them. That was the coolest thing, and it just completely vanished. So in very roundabout twisted ways, and of course there's like projects being built and layers atop and beneath it, but my point is, it's monetary value, but it's also community, and they're tied together in a token. And I think that
Hmm.
is why. So anyway, you were saying something.
Yeah, because I had the thought that, like, as Bitcoin and then Ethereum and then, crypto in general, blockchain in general, and tokens in general sort of have been growing. And to your point about, like having this sort of community plus value basis, it's like,
Yeah.
I had the thought that it's not so, it's speculation is part of it, certainly,
Mhm. Yes,
as a
exactly.
motivation to, like, to, I want to do well, right? Like, I want to
Of
do
course.
well. I want to be ahead of everybody else, and I'm going to
Yeah.
speculate that this is the right bet to make. And indeed, when I, in early days for me in this space,
Right.
in 2014 or so, I had that thought about Ethereum, and I was like, this could be a big thing, and so I stuck with it. And
Yeah.
um, but like, I had this thought that, what is happening around the world is that a parallel value system is,
Yeah.
like, building, developing, and evolving.
Emerging.
That's
Emerging.
that
Yeah.
emerging. Thank you. Or nascent, and in parallel with the long-standing financial systems that we have,
Right.
around the world, right? And I think that is in part because I think humanity kind of needs that option to have
Right.
stateless money, or options that don't have anything to do with, a state's issuance of fiat currency. I think that's definitely a big thing, kind of like in the development of
Hmm.
crypto and blockchain. So I
Right.
just had that thought of just that single phrase of parallel value systems, and
Yeah. Yeah.
wondering what you
Okay.
think about
Let's.
that phrase.
Yeah. Let's take it. I think it's funnily enough. Uh, let's take it to like the sociological side for a second, right? And so then what we're saying is, well, there isn't any two-party system for money, right? And I mean, obviously, the two-party system, and within democracy itself, you can argue, and generally I argue against it because it's mostly a false choice. But regardless, in this case, we can say that, well, what's essentially happened over the past, say, 100, the end of the Second World War, and sort of the consolidation later on, right, became, this is money, this is how it works, this is government, this is how it works, and sort of the entire world kind of accepted it. And now that cracks in the system start to come up, what happens when a parallel value system starts to emerge is now suddenly a dialectic conversation starts again. And so I was reading a bunch of stuff by Visa today. I mean, I even shared some stuff from the NFT3 handle, right? It's interesting to watch Visa dive so deeply into DeFi now. That's only happened because DeFi got to where it got to, BTC got to where it got to, right? And all of these factors have played a role. Like for example, that earlier piece I was talking to about community plus value, no better example than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is practically speaking a religion, like, I mean, for anybody who's like like my novelistic background, anybody like my philosophical side of me reads Bitcoin as a religion. And so that's like, it's a whole other thing, right? But regardless, today and that's like, it's questionable if that's a good or bad thing. I don't even know if that can be answered that easily, because clearly it's needed and that's what's coming up, right? But my point being, because this parallel system has emerged, the net is now in a state of tension where at least what's not going to happen is the guy renames it to Meta and just makes a walled garden without anybody saying anything. That can't happen now, and similarly, Visa can't just be like, hey, you know what, crypto's a scam, boom, that's it. When you realize the tech is that much more efficient and that much more powerful than whatever the hell you've been doing, right? Then you will have to start utilizing at least the tech side of it. And so I think there's a philosophical dialectic that has begun where it's like, well, remember we were watching the Google event or what it was, right? And then it was like, hey, de-identifying data all of a sudden by Google because they understand this movement's on the side. And so it's not gonna, there's gonna be some clashes. So I think it's very important because that's the kind of thing that gives things direction, that's philosophically oriented and not just, that theory of like, we just have to maximize returns for shareholders. I think that's a very old stale theory and it's time it was discarded, and I think that's what this movement of DeFi, I think that's cool. If I had to say what the most important thing today is, I think it's DeFi for our space, in the sense that that's where the value gets locked. That's where most of the users are right now, and I mean, not to suddenly start plugging, but that's why one of the things I have been most excited about this entire time we've been building NFT3, right, is NCredit. Because especially now in the bear market, by the way, because now we realize the most important thing right now for the space is something that can revitalize interest and confidence in DeFi. And so, if an NCredit comes out and then suddenly credit loans come into DeFi for the first time, that's a massive move, and I think the development and growth of that parallel economy or value system, however you want to look into it, right? It's not just an economy, because it's also a voting system. That's very important, right? So there's also a parallel format of governance, right? I'm very excited to see what DAOs do in the future, but I think right now it's DeFi. And so that's why I think our focus on NCredit as a product, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, agreed. So too, I want to talk about NCredit as we tie this up. But before that, when you were talking about Bitcoin and almost like a religion, it made me think a lot about one of the arguments that Yuval Noah Harari put forward. I think it was in the second book that he wrote, Homo Deus. And he was talking about how, like, in the modern age, our modern sort of like, I guess prophets, if you will, are tech CEOs, right? Like he's like Silicon Valley is a religion, right? And so we end up sort of following these new kind of like I guess he was making the argument that like we have as much respect for current like business and tech titans these days as we did, well, maybe respect, but adulation, admiration, whatever, as we did for prophets in previous religious prophets in previous ages, because these religious prophets would say, come to this is the vision of what the world
Yeah.
could be, right? And that's at the heart of this,
Interesting.
the vision of what the world could be. And a lot of these
Right.
tech CEOs, of which or
They have said
executives,
that
which I
and then
guess
made
we
it.
are.
So
Yeah, right. But it's
yeah.
interesting because like you have that. I feel like that religious component actually does play quite a bit of, like, psychologically or sociologically, does play quite a bit of a role, because a lot of people come into crypto, especially during bull markets, but even during bear markets too, with the idea that that there's this vision of something better that could be
Right.
possible, right? And indeed we have all these figures in our space. We've got these figures that become vaunted figures, like
Right.
CZ,
Gavin Wood.
Gavin Wood,
For sure.
Vitalik is like
Yeah.
has this prophet-like status, and we have and Satoshi Nakamoto is almost like
Is
God,
obviously the
because he's
right.
unnamed. We don't know who he is, or
Yeah,
they
yeah,
are rather.
Yeah.
And so I had this. I just wanted to like kind of like touch on that, and then about the credit. And credit. I think if we end up giving it that product name, which I think we will.
Sure,
it's
that's
really,
been our for anybody watching, that's been our like name for it so far. Like it's we're working on it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I recently I started, I was thinking about how having a credit risk or worthiness based in a pseudonymous sort of identity is really important, because there are some real problems with DeFi, especially with yield and over collateralization and the procyclicality of that whole situation. Because what happens is, and just for those who are wondering what procyclicality means, it just means that if the dynamics of whatever cycle that you're in are sort of pushed forward or magnified. So in DeFi, if you're in a bull market, things are sort of like easier, right? There's more room for appetite for lending. There's more
Risk taking.
the risk taking becomes less because everything's going up, right? And so more people pile in. Conversely, in a bear market, that procyclicality is going on the other end of the spectrum, and so not having a basis to either equally collateralize or under collateralize loan arrangements, because and I'll just back up. The reason why there's over collateralization in DeFi is because we can't identify people. Right. And identification of people is at the heart of credit risk and worthiness.
Exactly.
Assessing that. And this is a real tension, because it's like, well, a lot of people would argue, well, DeFi is great because we don't identify people.
But we, and they're true.
And I think I feel, and we feel that we can have the best of both worlds via decentralized identifiers, and sort of packing in onto a decentralized identifier and having an attestation, on the back end that says, hey, this person's a real person. We don't have to give out their personally identifiable information, but this verifiable credential attester, whether it be the government of India or whether it be a KYC provider, is saying, we attest that this person is a real person. Here's the handshake to prove it, because when they signed up, they provided their decentralized identifier. We did this little blah blah blah. And that's actually going to be really important, because what it can do is not only bolster or trigger a new bull market potentially, but it will also mean that the volatility inherent in DeFi will start to erode, and we'll start to have a more stable basis of giving out, giving out loans. So I think that's really, really important.
I want to ask you this question. There was a very sort of orthogonal way I was looking at it, recently. It was almost funny. I had never thought of it that way. But think about flash loans for a second, right? And the fact that, well, flash loans are used for a bunch of things, but also mostly hacks, right? Because because it's the one transaction thing and so on and so forth, right? the difficulty of, like, I mean, by difficulty I mean the technical difficulty for the lay user to get a flash loan, and then what the hell do I do with it? There isn't actually much I can do with it if I'm not, attacking something. I need the capital for a very short time, then I can return it, right? I was thinking, well, that's not a real user's loan. Like, who needs a loan for like a second, right? And so a flash loan is great. It fulfills a purpose, but it's like building a very intricate and difficult game at the top floor of a tower that not many people climb. For those people who are there, it's great and very useful. But for everybody else, it's like, well, what the hell even is it? If I was not in Web3, I would go, well, that's a useless thing to me. To me, what could be useful was if I could genuinely get a loan, and by that I mean a credit-based loan. That's the only kind of loan that the lay user will go, yeah, okay. Okay, collateralization, sure. There's a collateral-based loan, but again, we understand that cryptocurrencies themselves are volatile. So when we bring credit into the picture, that I think will be the closest to a real-world loan that a real-world user will understand, And that was just, I was just musing about it, like, hey, it should be, and you're right, it should then bring in people who are probably unbanked, and there's a lot of the world that is, right, who are getting credit for the first time. And so that means millions of new users coming in. If it's via this format, then that means a new bull run pretty much in a guaranteed fashion, doesn't it? I mean, I'm not making big claims here, but it would make sense,
I would like to actually make a bold claim, which is that if I think if we figure out decentralized identity, and we figure out credit via decentralized identity, I actually think that I don't see much use for banks. I see them the same way that, like, if we figured out email, it's not like mail went away, but
that's a fantastic analogy, though.
There wasn't much use for it, right? I mean, when I can hold my money in a wallet, or I can get credit, or I can, the major functions of a bank are to keep your money safe, right, and to lend you money. Those are I think the two major functions, unless I'm missing something. I probably am, but those are like it. And so if you can satisfy those two things, with these new technologies, then it's done, right? Like it's like, what I think that's probably going to be the case, So anyway, let's see. We are at a little over our time. We try to keep this to about 30 minutes. So do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, I do. It's going to be funny because I love the analogy you made with the post office and email, right? So let's just, again, we went in deep a little bit.
It's not a bad analogy because it's physical things versus virtual things, right? Like,
and the other thing still exists. It's not going to die. So that whole argument, I always think, is just useless. Of like, hey, do you think it's going to kill everything? And like, no, but it's not going to die.
Post offices didn't go away, and I don't think physical banks are
not going to go away either. But it's just this other thing is going to probably really be good.
So it's going to be a similar evolution. Like no one's going to say can you wire transfer me in 10 years? I really don't think so. Like they're going to be
and then wait for 10 days and get half the money cut off in the middle.
Although it'll still happen because for whatever reason, just like we still send some letters here and there,
Sure.
But
yeah. So the last thing I think I would like to leave our viewers or listeners with, is this story by Jerry Seinfeld that I really, really love. I don't know which special of his this is from, but it's about the post office because he makes fun of just the inefficiency and the meltdown they have every few years about having to raise the prices of those the stickers, whatever they call them,
stamps.
My default word coming to my mind was tokens because I'm a Web3 guy now. Stamps, exactly, right? And so his point, he makes a whole joke, a 10-minute joke.
Dude, your vocabulary is like insane, and you're struggling for the word I gotta check you
I
for
don't
a
know.
second. You're like,
I was just thinking tokens. Is it tokens? You know.
all right,
But
continue.
yeah. So
Yeah.
he makes this 10-minute incredible series of jokes about the post office versus the efficiency of everything. You know, and in the end, he says if the post office wanted to do something actually useful, you should just open our letters, read them all, and then send them the contents over email. You know, so it's I just
That's
thought it would be
true.
a nice place to pause this
That's
before
true.
we
I
do our
mean, wouldn't it
second.
be the same? Like if you deposited money in the bank, it'd just be easier
Yeah,
if they're like sent you, they keep the money and then just, I mean, which is sort of like what they do in a
that's what
way
Visa is
already,
working
right?
on, isn't it?
Because
That's yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
So yeah,
now, I mean, the difference is now we can just sort of like send it to each
do it
other.
ourselves. Do it
Um,
ourselves, exactly. Big
yeah,
difference.
cool,
Big difference.
cool. Well, this was great. This is a great first, um,
Yeah.
the most important thing podcast with NFT3. And yeah, I'm happy we did this. I don't have
Me too,
anything else to
man.
say. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thanks for taking out the time. We have to do this soon again.
Likewise. Yep, we will. We
Cheers,
will.
man.
Okay, cheers.